Recently, it seems like action games are all the rage nowadays. What with these games releasing to positive reception and commercial performance, it invites discussion about reviving previously dormant franchises, and amongst that list, we are inclined to revisit Saints Row. To be clear, Saints Row isn't a niche franchise. It's got more than 13 million in sales to its name. Saints Row is an action game franchise about the 3rd Street Saints, a gang. Despite what you might expect from gang-themed media, Saints Row is much more dynamic as a franchise. Comedic, though in a way not suited for all audiences. The games are made by Volition, which worked on the Red Faction series prior to Saints Row. The purpose of the games, in contrast to the easy comparison in Grand Theft Auto, is not in dramatism and the social commentary. When it is intended, is often meant to be subversive. Rather, Saints Row is all about indulgent, outlandish fun. We'll start with the first game, Saints Row, releasing in 2006 for the Xbox 360. You create your own character, down to his build, face, and hair, and take part in the game's events in Stillwater. 3 gangs are vying for control of Stillwater: Los Carnales, Vice Kings, and West Side Rollers. For the most part, you play along 3 main storylines that see you fighting against each of the gangs, with you operating as a member of the 3rd Street Saints. New missions are unlocked through the Respect system, a currency that can be acquired most easily through minigames of sorts called activities. As it turns out, the game was originally a PS2 title, and the developers constructed the game such that the players spent most of their time advancing 3 separate gang confrontation arcs to create a unique sense of freedom. While more than once seen as a Me Too Grand Theft Auto title, it still won favorable critical reception on its own merits, especially for its visuals and sound design. The first Saints Row would be accompanied by post-release DLC, most of which are cosmetic in nature. Saints Row 2 would follow in 2008, this time for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and the PC in 2009. Set again in Stillwater, the events of the game take place 5 years after the first Saints Row title. Saints Row 2 began development in 2005, 1 year before the first game released. From the beginning, Volition foresaw Saints Row as at least a 3-part franchise. By this time, Volition were very aware of comparisons to Grand Theft Auto and sought to craft their own identity for Saints Row with this game, and attempted to do so with their emphasis on humor and a general outlandish aesthetic, though the variety of humor is one that has been taken issue with for being offensive. As with the first game, Saints Row 2 would release to a generally positive critical reception across all of its platforms, save for the PC version due to technical problems. Next is Saints Row the Third, releasing in November of 2011 for PS3, Xbox 360, and PC, and much later for the Switch in May of 2019. It would later see release as Saints Row the Third: The Full Package, a release which includes all DLC for the game. The third takes place in a new location entirely, Steelport, but still featuring the Third Row Saints as story leads, as they seek to expand their influence after having grown by the end of the second game. The Saints' venture into Steelport sees them fighting against 3 new rival gangs for dominance. Story missions don't require respect to unlock this time, but instead award respect for completion, with higher respect levels giving the player access to more upgrades. The franchise's identity by this point is such that it had been established as outlandish and reveling in its irreverence. But while the third game reviewed well critically on average, more and more critics were also taking issue with what they saw as the problematic nature of its humor. As far as game development goes, notably there was a high degree of turnover. Only 20% of the staff that worked on this game had previously worked on a Saints Row title. Saints Row the Third was unique in that it was meant to serve as a bit of a reboot. Producer Greg Donovan wanted the third to be greatly memorable, full of moments that impress themselves upon the player's mind. The most recent Saints Row title is Saints Row 4, originally releasing for PC, PS3, and Xbox 360 in 2013. It would later be ported to PS4 and Xbox One and release in January of 2015. It would also later see an additional standalone release in Saints Row 4 Gat Out of Hell, a standalone title which follows the events of the game's story. By this time in the franchise, the Third Street Saints are far from what they started out as in the first game. They're not just a gang, but something of a personality empire. The plot of the game involves the gang fighting against an alien invasion and using superpowers to do so. Sound outrageous? Well, it was exactly what the developers had set out to do. Among its other notable traits, the plot of 4 also sees the return of characters from past games, and also amps up the abilities that players have access to. Now, players will be able to use elemental powers or use telekinesis. Activities are even more over the top than they have been. Critically, the game still received a positive average, but while the introduction of superpowers freshened the experience, it also threatened the difficulty of the game. Gat Out of Hell, on the other hand, would release to a considerably more middling average. And following Gat Out of Hell in 2015, what are fans left with? Well, THQ Nordic announced mid-August of this year that a new, full-entry Saints Row game is deep in development by Volition. After a few years of silence for the franchise in terms of releases, this is great news for waiting fans, and similarly great that Volition will be working on it. For those who have been enduring a long wait for another Saints Row game, enduring the painful experience of waiting without wondering when the anticipation will end, the happy news is that wait has a terminus. There will indeed be a new Saints Row game, and while we don't have any media or a release date, it doesn't get more official than a statement from THQ Nordic. The tense anticipation can give way to easier breathing and excitement. Have you played any of the Saints Row games? If so, which is your favorite? What aspect of the next games are you looking forward to most? If you weren't a fan of Saints Row before watching this video, had you heard of the franchise already? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always, thanks for watching. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.